and welcome to WCTV's Candidate Conversations. I'm Rob Peterson, and I will be your host. This series will serve as an introduction to our candidates running for Selectman and School Committee in 2016. Our guest today is Peggy Kane, who is running for School Committee. Peggy, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
This is going to be a pretty informal conversation. It's just going to be so the voters of Wilmington can get more acquainted with you, even though you've been around for quite some time, and just give us a little background on why you're running for School Committee again. So to start off the conversation, why don't you tell us with how long you've served on the School Committee thus far and why you're running again this term?
This time I've been on the School Committee since 2004, and I was ready at this point. I was thinking it's time to move on, but having a new superintendent and having some brand new initiatives, talking it over with other school committee members, we decided that I would stay for one more term. And I put in the paper that's one more term so that I will really leave in one more term. I've made that commitment.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So you've been on the school committee since 2004. How would you say the dynamic of the school committee has changed over the years since you've been on the board?
Wow, that's an interesting question. I guess I would say it's more open now. When I first came on, the chair really had a lot of power and really made a lot of decisions and brought them to the board, but the decisions were basically made. There was not a lot of emphasis in the same way on curriculum at all. The emphasis was on other areas. And so I think now it's much more educationally oriented than it was. Not that it wasn't educationally oriented, but it's just a different kind of focus. Okay. And I'd say the other thing is that the federal government and the state and this whole testing business has just really taken over what people are able to do.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much for that. So thank you for, you went over how the dynamics changed and how the school committee has evolved, and I appreciate that from you. So what would you say that over your term of serving on the school committee, what would you say that you like the most about your position as a member of the school committee here in Wilmington?
I like well, let me put it this way. I have 3 grown children who went through the schools, and now I have 2 grandchildren who are in 4th grade and 7th grade. And so I've always had a connection to the schools for these last few years. But what I like about how it has evolved and what's going on the school committee now, as opposed to earlier, is that people are all there. It's not going to sound right. Okay. People were always interested in the school committee, but people are really interested now in how to enable the children to do better, to use the money to the best of your ability was always a concern. But it seemed to focus more on busing. I remember one of the issues was busing and transportation, and we spent hours on that earlier in my career here as a school committee person. But now it's about what programs to bring in. How do we get the kids to be able to fill the gap from one grade year to the next? So it's much more curriculum oriented, and I love that because I was a teacher.
Okay.
So yeah, I love being able to look at the different curriculums and encourage the administration that yes, that's what we do need to do. Yeah.
So you were a teacher, and then you decided to run for the school committee. So how did that whole the dynamic situation work there? Is because you were a teacher, you wanted to run for the school committee, or was it just something that you had wanted to do for a while?
2 things had to do with my decision. The first one was one day I was riding down the street and I saw Mike Newhouse and his group holding signs, and I stopped to talk to him because I was really looking for something to get involved in more than I was around town. And we had a nice talk, and I started holding his signs, and I met Joe, who was not his wife at the time, and we started talking about different things in the town. And he had such a positive influence on me and my thoughts about the town. So that's one thing. The second thing is that I was getting ready to retire. And my husband had died in 1998, and so I had, once that happens, you have other things, you move on to something else and to keep yourself busy and not think about it. And so I had decided when I was retiring that, I want to look for something. Well, there was an unopposed seat and nobody was running for it. And I got phone calls from different people who said, this would be really perfect for you, give you something to do, plus you've got the background in education. And so I said, okay, and I did. So I ran unopposed my first time and my last time.
So you ran unopposed your first time and last time. Was there any elections in the interim between those,
Yeah.
the first and last that you ran opposed? And if there was, how is running opposed different from running unopposed?
Yes, there was. It cost you more money, for one thing, because you really have to, for the voters, you have to have signs, and you have to, the first time I ran opposed, I sent postcards, signs, you're everywhere, you're all over town visiting. My first time, in those days, people said the best thing you can do is knock on doors. So I went around town and I knocked on doors. I spent hours running, hours. So running unopposed, first of all, you go, oh, phew. It's really not going to take hours and hours, because I am on the school committee and I spend hours on doing that now. So my focus is different being unopposed. You want to do everything that's available for you, but the people don't expect you to do the same thing. I'm not going to have signs all around town this time like I did before.
Okay. Well, I thank you for coming out today. In closing, and I thank you for your years of service to the people of Wilmington and to the school committee. So in closing, I'm going to give you a chance to address the voters of Wilmington in advance of the elections on the 23rd.
Okay. I would say it would be wonderful if everyone got out to vote. The higher the voter turnout, the better. In unopposed races, it usually is not a high turnout, but we do have opposition in the selectmen's races. So hopefully that will happen. Secondly, the school system right now, having a new superintendent, we're at a point of change and growth. And I'd just like to say a few things to the parents. The parents, sometimes change is difficult for everybody. And the change that's happening is not that the superintendent came in and helter-skelter is making changes. She did an entry plan for a year, talked to everybody she could find, had evidence on things that were being said to her. She then put together a plan. And yes, she's making changes, but we can't blame everything on the superintendent. It really bothers me when I hear people say the superintendent's making this happen or not. No, she's got the full support of the school committee. The school committee is excited that changes are happening. We had a really strong system. We've had excellent superintendents. But things change because of what happens at the state level and the federal level. And so then you have to focus on other things. For instance, whether we'll have Park or whether we'll have, MCAS. We're making that change on the one-on-one for computers and Chromebooks and asking parents to supply their own Chromebooks. The reasoning behind that is not just to do it, it's because whatever test comes up, the Park or the MCAS, has to be done on computer. And they're expecting the students, people are asking if we have a different book rather than the Chromebook, could we use that? No, because the state is telling us and the federal government is telling us you have to have school-wide, you have to have the same, to make it equitable, you have to have the same the same tools. And so that's being done now, and some people are getting upset that we're having them buy these. But we could never afford to have that happen, to buy those for the schools, the children, 3,000 students. We couldn't possibly do that. No, but a lot of this is happening because of mandates coming down from other places, and we're trying to make it as easy as possible. So there's 2 meetings coming up for parents, the night before our school committee meeting at 5 o'clock in the school committee room, and then on April 5th. But we'll be at WCTV. So I think those things, I'm hoping people will give a chance. We had a meeting last night for the athletic director, and the superintendent did as much as she could to get it out there for people to come. And I wish more people would come. That's not always the case. And so I'd ask that people give this a chance. Give the new superintendent a chance. She's done a great job so far. We're very pleased.
Okay. Thank you very much, Peggy, and thank you for coming on and sharing
you.
your story with us and how you got to where you are today and running for your last election. So I wish you all the best luck.
Thank you, Bob.
I just want to remind everyone they can watch more interviews on WCTV on the online television channels or online www.wctv.org. And I also want to remind people to get out there and vote on Saturday, April 23rd, Election Day. And I thank you all for tuning in to watching. Thank you very much.